Good morning, everybody. This is Joe Pater, the Director of Utility Solutions here at MaxLite. We're doing a little update for you today on the C&I utility rebates across the country. It's June 2016. We're halfway through the year and excited to share with you a little bit of insight that we have from the utility team here at MaxLite. The first slide is really just an overview of what's happening in the space. We knew a long time ago that the strength of efficiency programs was going to continue to grow. And what it really comes down to is the economic value of energy savings is growing. And it's driven by a few factors, one of which is regulation at the state level, but other factors include environmental impacts and potential national regulation in relation to emissions. So what that really means and what it comes down to is because the majority of power generated in the U.S. is coming from fossil fuel, the emissions related to that is a cost, and that cost is increasing. So correspondingly, the value of energy saving, of essentially, pulling wattage demand off of the grid is increasing. And the utilities are using rebate programs as a lever to really drive that function for their business. Put another way, I can explain it to you by saying the reason utility programs exist is because the least expensive kilowatt hour to produce is the one that you don't have to produce at all. And that's really the core of what efficiency programs are aiming to do. Programs are definitely growing and evolving. I've been in this position 4 years with MaxLite and been studying the commercial industrial programs. The programs are not easy to understand, and I'm sure many of you deal with challenges in your local markets and probably scratch your head all the time about why things are the way they are. It's a challenge, and it really comes down to complexity across the whole country, 200-plus programs. Everybody's dealing with different incentive levels, different measure requirements, terms and conditions, etc. And you, as the salesperson or the person who's driving efficiency into the market, it's challenging. It's a real pain in the butt to deal with the changes in this space. And furthermore, if you're trying to do business outside of one market, it can be difficult to understand, the larger scale. Like if you're working with a national chain, 200 locations, dealing with 5 or 6 utility programs can be a real burden. So it's not easy, but it's a heck of a lot of opportunity to tap into if you know how to do it. And that's what I'm hoping today you'll gain a little bit more insight into how to do it. The rebate dollar amount values per fixture are definitely in decline, and that's really just a matter of price coming down as well. But correspondingly, the budgets are increasing. So a heck of a lot more money is being spent on projects across the country. And whereas incentives may have been a $200 amount a year ago, they might be $125 today. And that really just means that more projects are getting done because that budget is lasting longer. And also the budgets in general are increasing across the board. A lot of stuff is moving away from fluorescent into LED. The LED upgrades exist across the country now. And in even some of the conservative states, in the places that are burning a lot of coal, they're starting to see the value of energy efficiency programs. And smart people in this space are thinking, gosh, this is an industry that's going to continue to grow in terms of value. So when we think of energy production, everybody loves to think about renewables and the concept of distributed generation off in the distant future. That might be a little closer than we think now with the advent of storage technologies that are being worked on today, but it's still expensive. It's not the easiest thing to implement, and it requires a heavy-duty capital investment. Well, energy efficiency, on the contrary, does not require a ton of understanding or really in-depth engagement with the power grid. In the business that we're in, lighting, we simply switch inefficient fixtures for efficient fixtures. And many of you have built really strong businesses just simply doing that, helping people understand the economic dynamics at play. And if you're good at telling that story really speaks for itself. So reducing the operating costs of any business is a great lever to increasing the capability of businesses in the marketplace. And utilities, if you think about utilities, they are the most monopolistic business still in existence. You really don't have a choice in most markets about, who you're buying your electricity from. And therefore, the utilities have what you would call a responsibility to the business community and to the broader community that they serve to encourage economic development. And really, the folks inside the utility, they realize that their business is healthiest when the marketplace is growing. So when new businesses are being formed, when innovation is taking place, and when people are moving to their cities to take part in these new business ideas and ventures, that's really where utilities thrive. So the utilities have figured out, hey, if we want to push people to come to our area or our service territories to live and work, we've got to make the dynamics really solid for the business community. And rebate programs are a great way to do it. It's also kind of a customer service element as well. It keeps you happy with your local utility. Whether or not it's a pain in the butt, that's kind of separate. But if they're offering money, it can be something that really is positive for many different players in the marketplace. But it's changing, and we're now in a place with the advent of LED coming so far in the last 18 months. I mean, it's been an incredible ride. If you've paid really close attention to it, pricing has declined dramatically across the board, yet the efficiency and efficacy of product is increasing across the board. So we're getting much better product at lower costs. Everybody in the supply chain is kind of squeezing costs where possible. There's probably a lot of beneficiaries in this room today who have benefited from reduced costs, and also the reality that rebates aren't always optimized. The reality is that rebates get written in a point in time, and then they maybe last 12 months, maybe they last more than that, maybe less, but it's not as if the utility is taking into account real-time pricing data. That might happen in the future. There might be a scenario where that starts to play out, but today it's very static. So a form comes out today, you pretty much can rely confidently on that form existing for at least the next 90 days, maybe much longer than that. And if you're smart about it and you know the way that you can work it, you can really be a strong beneficiary. And one of the plays that I think everybody in the room should be considering, if you're not already, is getting involved in the Midstream Programs. So if you haven't heard this term yet, it's basically the idea that you don't need a form anymore because the form and paperwork relies on the distributor to submit back to the utility. So the way it physically looks is, say, an end-use customer or a contractor comes into a distributor and says, hey, I'm looking for some 60-watt equivalent A-lamps, 100-watt equivalent A-lamps, and some linear T-LEDs for a project. And distributor, if they're partnered up with the utility, they may have an offer right there at the counter. Say, all right, great, glad you're here. The utility is offering $3 off on this lamp, $6 on this, $8 on this. And the discount is given to that end customer right there at the point of sale. The only requirement is that that end customer understands where it's going, because the distributor needs to send it back to the utility for payment and proof of payment to a correct service territory or service address. I guess to simplify that, the utility simply needs to know where it's going. In the current existing way of going to market, the form that gets filled out, the 10-page PDF form or Excel document or online submittal, it includes the final installation address. So that is absolutely still required. And that's the only pain in the butt that I will say involved with the midstream programs. But if you can figure it out, and as a distributor or somebody who's reselling product, if you can have a documented system that captures everybody's buy and associates it with a physical end address, you could be a very, very big beneficiary of midstream programs. Now, they don't exist everywhere, but they're growing like crazy. So what I would recommend right off the bat, because we've got over 100 people on the call today, is just look at your local utility and see if there is a midstream program to either take advantage of or to get involved with, when it does launch. And I'm going to show you in a few slides a couple of things I can offer you on that. So the next slide is some examples of some of these midstream programs, and they're really born out of the idea of how residential programs go to market. So if you've got a Home Depot that you visit regularly, or a Lowe's, or maybe a Menards or whatever, you're likely going into a retail setting and seeing a local utility tag on a lamp for sale. And you may scratch your head occasionally and say, what is this about? It's essentially the same thing, but it's targeted for residential customers. You probably have taken advantage of it in the past. Those programs are very inexpensive to run. Quite literally, the only cost to the utility is the incentive plus the administration cost. The retailer handles a lot of the other burdens. And they're trying to apply that same model to commercial. So that's what we like to call the midstream program. And the reason it's midstream is because the distributor is getting paid in the transaction. The distributor is the one who submits the data back to the utility and then gets paid for those incentives that they've already arranged with the customer. Just to clear up the midstream concept, downstream would mean that the end-use customer receives the rebate. So say it's Jim's warehouse company, he would be the fella who gets the rebate. That's called downstream. That's the way a very large chunk of the business is done today, probably 70 or 80% is paid in that fashion. Now, Jim could decide, I want to have my contractor receive that payment, or I want to have whoever helped me get this deal set up receive that payment, and they're going to offer me a discount somehow. That's possible, but in either case, it's considered downstream. And then upstream is where a manufacturer gets paid. And that's kind of the whole, cycle of how these things are termed. People have different terms for everything. I'm not trying to say mine are precise, but just generally, midstream means that the distributor or the one who's distributing the product is the one who's getting it paid from the utility. And these incentives are great. I mean, look at the one on the right. This is the Mass Save incentive form. Par 30s, $20. Par 38s, $25. A-lines, $5 and $10. They're pretty incredible. The bottom left is also pretty strong. That one is I think it's the Baltimore program. Yeah, it's Baltimore Gas and Electric. Very strong there. I mean, these incentives are just kind of like, you kind of scratch your head a little bit, but you do realize distribution is adding margin, and there is a cost associated with taking the product in and then selling it to the end user. And also there's a cost associated with collecting that data. So the balance becomes, what is the cost to the utility of still doing the old paper format versus doing this? And this is increasingly growing in the marketplace. And what I would encourage you to do is start to look into your local utilities to find out, do they already have an existing program in place for midstream? How can you get involved? And if they don't, at least form the connection with them where you're going to be the first one notified when they do create a program, because this stuff is going around like crazy in the utility circles. It's been evaluated very well over the last few years. There's been a lot of instances of positive attribution, which simply means that the money being spent is actually going to impact real projects. And it also is a mechanism to reduce risk. So we just recently got notice from Duke Energy a few weeks ago, biggest electric utility in the U.S. Duke Energy and Progress combined cover a bunch of stuff in the Southeast. And what they were suffering from is people manipulating the invoice price on prescriptive rebates. So you're familiar with the forms, and there's always a certain percentage that they'll pay up until. Long story short, people are smart and they understand the loopholes, and people write things the way that it needs to be written to maximize the value. There's really nothing wrong with that, I'd say. I mean, somewhat following the rules, but it's not an efficient market, I guess is the best way to say it. And I think everybody in the room would probably agree. It's not in our best interest to see somebody getting paid $20 consistently on something that should be, realistically $8, because people take advantage of stuff, and it just it steamrolls, and you got one person benefiting because they know the loophole versus the others who are following the rules. So not really completely fair. All right, so the next slide, we've documented some of the links for some of these programs, and we're going to share this deck with you if you're interested. Each of these links will take you precisely to the page that will define how you get involved. You can see it's a wide range of places across the country where these things exist. Some are much easier to work with than others. Some are more ingrained in the marketplace than others. And there's also a lot that even I don't have a lot of visibility to. For example, there's one in Louisiana, there's one in Georgia, and run by an implementer who doesn't really put it out in a public way. And it's kind of one of those things where you have to, I don't want to say know somebody, but you have to at least engage with the utility to get involved. So what I would encourage anybody who's interested in getting into the midstream programs is just reach out to your local utility. Very simply ask them about midstream or distributor instant rebates or incentives. Even if they don't have anything today, just form a relationship with them, even just get on their email list, sign up as a trade ally. Any connection you have with your utility will be valuable to you. We here at the MaxLite office, we study all the programs. So there's like 220 plus programs that are of any value to the market. We have all that data up on our rebate finder, but the thing that we don't have is in-depth, intimate knowledge about every single local program. And we just don't have the breadth to handle that. So that's kind of on our distributor customers and our rep agents and the folks in the field selling our products. I just really encourage you to form a connection with the utility in whatever way you can. Go to some of their events. Oftentimes they'll publish a calendar of like training events. Most of you in the room have probably done stuff like this throughout your career, and it sounds repetitive, but for the few who haven't played closely with utilities, I'd highly encourage you to reach out and just form a bond with them somehow. You never know how it could benefit you long term. There's also opportunities with utilities to sell, so I'm sure a lot of folks are aware of that. Utilities buy a lot of product. The next slide just talks about DLC 4.0. DLC 4.0 spec has been released. It's very consistent with 3.1 except efficacy increases. So basically everything's got to become more efficient. Set for 2017 implementation, January. Product will fall off the list. I think it's April 30th, or it's at the end. It's somewhere around the end of the first quarter. That existing product that doesn't need 4.0 will fall off the list, so be aware of that. Our product management team is working very hard to ensure a clean transition. We're also working really hard to engage with the DLC premium spec. We're starting to see this more across the country. We see it now in Massachusetts, in Maine, we see it in California, where DLC premium, which is just basically a higher stepped up tier, requires a higher level of efficacy. This is now, in my opinion, DLC premium will be where everybody wants to be because of the increased efficiency, because of the potential of higher rebates. And that's where we're headed as a company. Everything that we're building today, we're considering DLC premium. And as you probably already know, QuadraMax is DLC premium, and we've got a bunch of other stuff that already is. This flyer on the bottom is something our marketing team just created. If you shoot me an email, my email's right there on the screen, I will send it to you. So feel free to reach out. Tell me a little bit about your business. I'll send you back this flyer document. It's a pretty nice little 2-pager that tells you about every one of our products and what they qualify for. Also, network control spec is coming online. It's been released as of the 27th of this month. So if you go to DLC, you're now going to see a QPL or qualified product list for network control specification product. There's only one player on the list right now, but I know there's a lot of folks working toward that certification. A lot of people saying, hey, why aren't we embracing the concept of network controls with our commercial lighting systems? It doesn't make any sense that we're not taking advantage of this technology, and everybody's going to be headed this direction. I think estimates right now are less than 5% of installs are even considering this type of thing, and the goal is to get that up to plus 80%. Network controls just become standard. And that's another question in itself. When things become standard, they don't necessarily always necessitate rebates, but that takes a long time before everything becomes standard. So to answer that question, if anybody has it in their mind, it's just we've still got years of strong play in this space, years of opportunity. And most of you know the reality of ROI right now is incredible. And payback is nearing less than 12 months on some of the most simple upgrades. It's getting to the point where businesses who don't make the investment in it are wasting a lot of money, and it's becoming a no-brainer type decision. It's just a matter of telling the story. So you got to be able to tell the economic story. It's important to be able to do that. On the next slide, just talking real briefly on Energy Star 2.0 lamp spec. This is out now, and we have product in transit. We have a dimmable version coming in next week, and we have a non-dimmable version coming in the first week of August. Very aggressive pricing. The special part about ours is we're going to keep lifetime at 25,000 hours. We're having it tested to that. So most other manufacturers are going down to 15,000 because that's what the spec now requires. It was 25, but we are going to attempt to differentiate ourselves by keeping ours at 25. We think that has a lot of strength in the marketplace. and feel free to promote that. And these two items are going to sell like crazy. The second one, the 9919 LED 27/G4, this is like your new CFL. And you're probably scratching your head, what does that mean? Talk to whoever it is that you're getting pricing from or whoever it is you're sourcing from. It's not at CFL pricing today, I wouldn't say, but this is the equivalent technology-wise, about what the CFL has done over the last 5 or 6 years. This is going to be the new really big high-volume item. It's non-dimmable, but as most of you probably realize, a large majority of sockets don't need dimming, and there's no reason to put a dimming bulb into a socket that will never be dimmed. It just doesn't make any sense. So get aggressive on this. I think it'll benefit you. We've got a ton of resources if you're not already aware. A lot of you probably are aware. First one is our ROI calculator document. This is a really nice template that one of our team members has developed. If you know Shanali, she's the one who built this thing from the ground up. It's got a real simple entry process for your existing and your new. It'll write up everything from payback, ROI, cost of waiting. If you want the template, again, shoot me a note. I'll send it back to you. Another resource is we're now associating pricing with rebates. So on the rep website, if you are a MaxLite rep, you can download pricing alongside rebates for any market. We think that's of value to the folks in the space. Of course, you know about our utility rebate finder. You can find it right on the home page up on the top. It's just a simple drop-down menu. Choose your state, choose your program. We're going to show you what rebates we see in the market for lamps, fixtures, outdoor and indoor. You can print it to a PDF or print it to an Excel. You can manipulate the data if you want to load in something, for your customers or pricing, whatever the case is. You can use the Excel file to make it what you need it to be, but essentially we want to give people visibility into what we're seeing. I won't say that the utility rebate finder is always 100% accurate. It's just way too complex to be able to keep it to 100%, but we're probably at about 95. So what I mean by that is we have new products coming out all the time, and our team currently manually needs to go through each product and look at each program, associate the correct rebate value for each new product. It's kind of a pain in the butt. It takes a lot of time, and it's kind of inefficient, I would say, but it gets the job done, and it's the best way we've figured out how to do it. So if you notice something that's odd, like you don't see a product on the finder or you see a rebate value that doesn't look correct, I would encourage you to reach out to us. The email is right there on the page. It's utility@maxlite.com. One of our staff members will fix it, and we will thank you graciously for your time and letting us know. But for the most part, you can feel pretty confident about what you find on there. And we also have a custom rebate calculator. So if you've got custom rebates in your marketplace, use that same drop-down. Go to the custom rebate calculator. We've got a real simple entry process to get you to a point where you can get a good estimate on a custom rebate. Custom rebates are great if you've got long operating hours and can be very beneficial if it's a high custom dollar amount. Intuitively, people tend to lean toward prescriptive because they like the idea of knowing exactly what the rebate is. But I'm sure there's a lot of folks in the room who have done custom rebates with their customers and seen pretty solid rebate values. And it's kind of funny, like the one thing I'll say about it is custom rebates serve a purpose because they help you define what's going on in the market. Like as a utility, you need to know what is the baseline, what are people upgrading, what is actually happening in the space. And a custom rebate gives that kind of granular detail. But custom rebates are also very time intensive to manage because you got a lot of paperwork coming in, a lot of stuff to review. It's also kind of a pain for whoever's submitting the paperwork because there's a lot of data involved. So in the last few years, there's been a big trend toward prescriptive, which everybody loves prescriptive, $100 for a wall pack, $50 for a downlight. Very simple to understand. It's just, basically like a cashback rebate. And that's the current trend. But what it's going to eventually go back to is custom because the value economically is growing, yes, for the energy savings, but the dynamics in the market are creating a lot of, I wouldn't say instability, but there's a lot of transitional change occurring faster than anybody can keep up with. So utilities are now chattering about like, hey, how do we develop optimized rebates? Like how do we get it to the point where we understand the precise amount that the customer needs us to rebate to get them to flip this job into a yes? How do we get the customer the exact amount that they need to make the payback make sense? So we're not there yet, but I can imagine a future a few years out where that starts to become the trend. And I think, fortunately, the systems in which that's implemented will probably be improved. It'll make it a lot easier on you as well as the utility. So you can also find the relevant rebates on any product page. Just navigate to any product page on our site. On the bottom, you'll see a tab that says Utility Rebates. So in this instance, we're looking at WallMax, wall packs. They're DLC qualified. Click on that tab. You'll see the rebates only for that item. That's kind of a nice little system that a lot of folks aren't really aware of. So check that out. The next page is just the 2016 landscape. Blue represents the quantity of prescriptive values in our space, and then red is custom. So you can kind of see a little bit of a trend. I mean, the Northeast has a lot of strength on prescriptive, and the middle of the country, especially like Texas, has a heck of a lot of support for custom. California still has a lot of custom, and kind of gives you an idea of the breadth and kind of quality of programs across the country. We are going to eventually have this for Canada as well, working on that. The last scorecard document is the AC Tripoli. You're probably familiar with this. I always show this in all of our webinars. It's just generally it'll tell you where your state is and associated with all the others. Massachusetts is currently number one. They're spending the most amount of money and they're delivering the most energy savings. You may scratch your head and say, how can they get away with the rebates they're paying? Well, the cost of energy to them is higher. The cost of avoided energy is higher, so essentially they can't afford to pay higher rebates. That's why that market is so strong. And we also see that in some other places across the country. But we also see strength in like Illinois, and we see strength in Minnesota. A lot of these Midwestern states are coming online pretty well, including Michigan, Iowa. Midwest is coming on. Colorado is really strong now. California's always been strong. Oregon's always been strong. The Northwest, Washington, has always been good. But there are some pockets that are starting to really develop here in the Midwest. Summary, next steps, like I said before, just reach out to your local utility, strengthen that relationship, ask about midstream incentives, download the data for your local program right from the rebate finder, and familiarize yourself with the form. If you're out there pitching rebates, at least spend a little bit of time looking at the form. The form can be complex, the kind of thing that you don't really even want to look at ever, but if you have an intimate knowledge of the form and the terms and conditions, you'll be stronger in the marketplace. And finally, just our contact info. We've got 3 people on the team, myself, Chad, and Max. We're all here in the Wisconsin office and all ready to assist as needed. Just have some ideas up top there. If you have any of these things going on, shoot us a note at utility@MaxLite. We will certainly do our best to support you in whatever way we can to help you sell the MaxLite product. And our intention is to help you grow your business. So if you've got other ideas that we could potentially help with, let us know. And if you have any, questions or things you want us to develop conceptually, we're always open to ideas. So reach out and get to know us as well. And that's all I got for you. So thank you for stopping in today and have a great day. I'll stay on for a couple minutes here in the chat. If you have the questions, shoot them over in the chat and I'll handle any questions as they come up.